Brawlhalla released a new Star Wars Mandalorian crossover, and people are upset. More upset than I've ever seen for a skin set before, and I can kind of understand why. This right here is the Mandalorian, which offers a swap on your heavy attack visuals, a swap on your light attack visuals, and a companion pet Grogu which follows you around the map. To get this Mandalorian, you have to drop about $20 worth of mammoth coins, the in-game currency, but it's actually usually more than that, which I'll get into later. $20 for an untradeable digital skin is enough for some to be up in arms, and maybe justifiably so. $20 is a lot of money, but it's not that simple, and we're gonna break down and explore why. Today, we're gonna be talking about predatory gaming industry practices and where Brawlhalla lines up in that pedigree. We're gonna explore why this specific skin crosses the line for many, and why you should be cognizant of the marketing that often fuels your purchases. We're gonna be taking a look at all of Brawlhalla's money-making strategies, and why the argument of this is just their monetization model, it's how they keep the lights on, you don't have to buy it, is somewhat incomplete. For what it's worth, I kind of agree with that statement. Kind of. You'll see what I mean. Brawlhalla has a free-to-play, skins-to-buy model. It's classic in the mobile games industry, but if I'm not mistaken, all the way back in 2014, BMG based their model for their game on League of Legends, the classic League of Legends model, but for fighting games. When it comes to their in-game currency, Brawlhalla uses pretty much the same business model as all of their competitors, with the goal of capturing your attention for as long as possible and capturing your money for as much as they can. That's not inherently bad, they're a business. You could say it's an unfortunate reflection of the type of economy we live in, but I don't think anyone is looking to blame a gaming company living in a money-making society trying to make money as a pure philosophical value there. The main point of critique is how that money is generated, and some of the aspects of this model are less than savory. We've got mismatched dollar-to-coin ratios, battle passes, loot boxes, sort of, but to give BMG some credit here, Brawlhalla is far less predatory than their closest competitors in scale and player base. That's not saying their model is absolved of any kind of critique, but it would be careless of me to not mention that. And we're gonna deep dive into all the ways they use, abuse, or avoid playing into modern money-making psychology. So back to the Mandalorian now. Most skins in the game are around $4 to $10, which is translated into 80 to 200 mammoth coins, not including sales. With the creation of Apocalypse Mirage, they released epic skins and epic crossovers at 300 mammoth coins, which modify the signature animations or have some kind of additional perk like animated weapon skins or an included emote. And then they made mythic skins starting at 400 mammoth coins with the SpongeBob crossover, which change all of the included things before, while also making adjustments to the movement animations or the light attack animations, which are a bigger deal, or visual effects in some way as well. So now we've got modifications that are anywhere from 2 to 5 times more expensive than their cheaper counterparts. The Mandalorian, he sits at 500 mammoth coins. That's a lot. And if that amount seems out of touch or aggravating, that is totally fair. Even more so if you live in an area where the dollar has much more purchasing power than your local currency, because then the price can skyrocket into the hundreds. Extremely quick side note here, by the way, I want to mention this before getting into anything else. It would be really cool if Brawlhalla adjusted their currencies based on the conversion rates with other countries' currencies. I don't think they do it very frequently, if at all, but I also know that presents issues with trading accounts and botting up prices since it's not a single player game. So who knows if that's feasible. Those of you not in countries that use the USD, let me know what that situation is like, because I am curious. Anyway, the strict dollar amount here, $20 for the skin, is also not really what I want to focus on because I think there's a much more fascinating topic to analyze here. These issues of price creeping up have peeked their head out for a while, but it's taken this moment right here, this dramatic price tag, to really examine what's going on under the hood. And frankly, it might be a little bit of an overdue conversation. The Mandalorian's cost here highlights a deeper concern with purchasing power in Brawlhalla's store. The specific point of 500 mammoth coins is particularly frustrating because you can't actually get 500 mammoth coins. You can buy 540, but you can't buy a clean 5. And sure, if you have some leftover coins from a previous purchase, then you could get that exact amount, but that shouldn't be expected from the customer. And the reason for this, at least from what I can tell, is to ultimately obscure the one-to-one comparison between dollars and mammoth coins. The less you think about coins as direct money, the more likely you are to make a purchase, because there's more friction for your brain to figure out how much you're actually spending. It's why I keep saying 500 coins is about $20, because it's not a simple comparison. Value packs, battle passes, big purchase discounts, these all impact the exchange rate, and it's for a specific purpose: to get you to buy more. This isn't evil, but it's certainly an opportunistic marketing practice that you should be aware of. You are far more likely to make a purchase that you wouldn't make otherwise when seeing 200 coins banked in your account than if you were to see a $5 price voucher banked in your account, simply because it doesn't automatically translate in your head the same way standard money does. Much less 200 coins banked in your account versus seeing a $5 price tag, which is also how it often happens. You've got mammoth coins in your stash, a new thing comes out, and you use up those coins since there's very little friction. You've already got it, so you might as well. And then you have to top up your account again for the next time. And depending on the cost, you might be overpaying for what you're actually looking to get. And there's 2 reasons why this is a little bit dubious: leftover coins and time delay. Let's start with having mammoth coins left over, since that exacerbates this time delay issue. If you need 500 mammoth coins to get the Mandalorian and you can only buy 540, you've got 40 left over. And maybe a weapon skin you want goes on sale next week, or a legend you like, and even though the price doesn't really seem worth it, you get them instantly with the blue coins, so you pull that trigger. Or maybe an avatar pops up that you never would have looked twice at, but since you've got some coins left over that you can't get a full skin with, you might as well buy it. Or maybe a full skin is on sale, and you only need to spend, let's say, 60 more coins to get it. Well, that's a pretty good deal, and the deal is gonna go away, and you already have 40 coins, so you might as well get just a little bit more to buy it. There's so many examples of how this comes into play. And then when the next thing comes out, you've gotta do it all over again. But it's all artificial. You never would have had the extra amount if you didn't pay extra for it. It's not actually extra, and you're spending more in the long term with each additional purchase. Of course, you could say, well, you don't need to get anything new anyway. Whenever something comes out, you just don't get it. Why do you have to buy things? Which is true, but it's also sort of missing the mark here. What these systems do is get people that are already buying things to buy even more than they originally planned to. And even if that's something that's not really worth thinking about, the overpayment itself is frustrating. If something costs 500, as a customer, I should be able to spend only 500 to get it. But this is even more of an issue when you consider time delay and reinforcement punishment marketing techniques. Sometimes the delay between when you pay for the coins and when you use them is instant. You buy the item right away. So you feel the impact of the purchase right away. It's why you give a treat to a dog immediately after they perform a trick and not 7 hours later. Or in this case, why you reprimand them for jumping on the counter right away instead of doing that next week. The association between the purchase and the impact is instant. So our brains make the connection that we just spent money. We just made a conscious decision to do that, and we'll be mindful and consider that past context for the next time. It's not like buying something you want is bad by any means, but you want to be in the driver's seat and actually be buying something you actually want. Because very frequently, that delay between when you pay for the coins and when you use the coins is staggered. Meaning you don't really feel the impact of the purchase when you're actually making the purchase, which is the most important time to be considerate of how you spend your money. That's how credit card debt accumulates, that's how Klarna and Pay Later works, which, by the way, not financial advice, but don't do that. Do not use Pay Later if you cannot pay later. It seems obvious, but that lack of friction has overwhelming evidence showing us that it makes us spend more, and even if you know, you're not immune. I mean, these business models are thriving. They wouldn't if it didn't work. Or back to this original analogy, if you reprimand your dog for jumping on the counter randomly a week after they do it, that association between action and effect is not gonna stick at all. Which is all to say, the more a game distances the value of the money and the value of the in-game currency, the more likely you are to spend. Brawlhalla is not a credit card company, and they're not Klarna, and they're not even close to being as demonic as some of the other games in this industry, but the psychology behind some of these choices are pretty similar, and it's helpful to be aware at the very least of all of the areas in your life they may be popping up. So you combine these two factors, the leftovers from overpayment and the time delay, and this cycle repeats again and again. Keeping in mind that the price point of mammoth coins and the price point of skins is something that is intentionally and deliberately set in order to get people to spend more, and these are two reasons why people spend more. Of course, there's the counter argument of just don't be stupid. If you don't want something, don't buy it. And again, to a certain extent, I do agree with that. Everything here is cosmetic. You can play the same game without any of the skins. But I think to say that while ignoring all of these background marketing practices is being maybe just a little bit negligent, because they do come into play and humans are not rational machines immune to outside influences, especially when those outside influences have been intricately designed to hijack certain parts of our psychology with the goal of earning more money over decades and decades and decades. When people get up in arms about a $20 skin, it's not just the $20 price tag they're mad at. And look, I will never, this should be obvious, I will never condone dogpiling on the devs and sending them terrible, terrible messages. I think if you do stuff like that, like, what's going on? That is not what this community is about. And I really want this video right here to be a piece of valuable information rather than a source of any negativity. So I want to examine this online anger with a closer lens. Even if those that are typing up a storm clearly frustrated outwardly are not acutely aware of these simmering marketing tactics, even if their rage is unproductive and directed in the wrong places, it is indicative of a certain underlying feeling that I think is worth looking at. People ultimately feel like they're being taken advantage of. They feel like they're not respected as an individual with agency. They feel like they're being spit on by an out-of-touch system, and they feel as though the company dishing out these sparkly cosmetics does not care about them. How much of this sentiment is justified and how much is your epic gamer entitlement moment 8001 is something to think about later in the video, but I think making sense of why people may react like this first is helpful to digest the rest. Whether or not you agree with the price tag of the Mandalorian, at least it's fair. You know what you're getting. You're guaranteed to receive the product that you pay for, and the cost of it does not change the more money you're putting in. It's not the Arcane Jinx skin, for example. That should be the bare minimum, but it's not. Loot boxes, loot chests, whatever you want to call them, have infiltrated free-to-play gaming in such a comprehensive way that it's just normal now. It wasn't always that way, but it is now. And Brawlhalla, as much as I love Brawlhalla, is not immune. Although, I will say their implementation is at least better than most out there, but I'm probably going to be saying at least a lot here, because that's sort of the thesis. They use some shady tactics, but at least they're not as bad as everyone else, so take from that what you will. Loot boxes are basically gambling, just with the added bonus of having the discrepancy between dollars and in-game coins too, which I mentioned earlier. And also, you're not actually getting any money, which gambling isn't good for either, let's be clear, but this makes loot crates and gacha mechanics even stranger. Many forms of loot boxes are all but banned now, but gaming companies still circumvent that all the time. Look at CSGO or CS2 cases, look at TF2 crates and keys, and that aforementioned Arcane Jinx skin if you know what I'm talking about. The practice is alive and well. Brawlhalla's implementation is better. There's no change in gameplay with the rare skins you'd find in their chests, like the Star Wars Battlefront games had, for example. Every skin offered in the chest is cheaper than it would be to buy it straight up, which is also a marketing tactic to make you feel better about purchasing the chest because it seems more worth it, but at least you're not getting something of less value. That's another thing. There's no garbage spam items of less value in the item pool. You're not going to get crystals, or you're not going to get a Galil AR skin. And on that point, every item in Brawlhalla's chests have an equal chance to drop, so the rare skin that you want has an equal chance as any of the others in the list. as opposed to, for example, with CS crates, there is a 0.1% chance to get a knife. That can't be right. Is it 0.1%? Is it 0.5? Is it 2%? Is it 5%? It doesn't matter. The whole point is that you have less of a chance to get it. It is literally gambling. So Brawlhalla is better there, and they're also better in the fact that you're guaranteed to get everything in the chest if you keep paying for it, which is stupid, but at least it's honest. You could open up a million CSGO cases and not get every item in there. And this is something that we're also going to talk about later. These chests always come back, so it's not a one-time deal that you'll miss forever if you miss it now. Don't worry, there's still a timer counting down to play into that classic scarcity marketing, but at least they come back eventually. If you can't tell, Brawlhalla's chests are the things that I like least about the game. So much so that I made an entire dedicated video explaining how the psychology behind it works and how to avoid feeding into the impulse to spend more money when they came out. I've now taken that video down because I don't love how I presented the info. I think it could be a lot better. And here is the new one where I'm talking about it again. Essentially, it's gambling psychology. Brawlhalla implemented a bunch of factors to make it not as bad as other games or other services, but it's still the same idea. Disconnect the dollar from the in-game coin, feature exclusives you can't get anywhere else, and use random variable ratio rewards to encourage you to keep pushing the lever. If you don't know what variable ratio rewarding is, it's basically a way to make a reward expected but not guaranteed, so that every single time you engage in a behavior, it's exciting. Now apply that to a situation where you're spending money, you're giving something up, which is pretty inherently exciting, and the chance to get something else is randomized, so you don't actually know. You're expecting that you can get it, but you don't know when you're gonna get it, and you just keep pushing the button over and over and over again. The biggest job of a game is to get you to spend money once. Because if you spend money once, you're so much more likely to spend money again. And chests are the perfect way to get you to spend again. It seems like a good deal, there's something exclusive, it looks like it's going away and you won't have another chance to get it, so you've gotta do it right now. And remember that coin dollar purchase deal I spent a few minutes talking about before? These chests are clean 100 mammoth coin purchases. So let's say you're gonna spin that wheel 5 times. How are you gonna do that? Well, you're gonna have to buy, that's right, 540 coins. And then you have some left over, and we're back to the previous chapter. I promise this is all relevant to the Mandalorian release and why this specifically has made people mad, but while we're exploring Brawlhalla's monetization strategy in comparison to other games, let's just quickly look at all of the ways they're making money in the shop. Because I think this helps paint the picture for this new Mandalorian release and why to many in the community it feels like there's been a trend towards more profitability over actually adding genuine features. Which I would say is mostly untrue, but the sentiment still does persist, likely due to the fact that these new crossovers bring the most amount of eyes to the game in comparison to balance tweaks, or even weapon releases. So here we go. Within mammoth coins and skins, there's the crossovers, which the Mandalorian is grouped into, and the epic/mythic skins that I mentioned earlier. I'll cover both of them in the same section here since they basically have the same underlying basis for conversation here. These are a little different than simple skin swaps because they can actually modify the animations and the sounds of attacks, which are extremely vital pieces of information for a fighting game. Since Brawlhalla released, they've always had the motto of free to play, never pay to win. And that's still true, but crossovers and these epic mythics have blurred the line ever so slightly. It's not anything massive. If you buy a crossover, you're not gonna suddenly be a better player. But the first time the community ever had a basis to call this never pay to win philosophy into question was with these releases. And BMG did kind of mess up with the first wave of them, particularly on the sound effects end, since so many of them were completely quiet, to the point where if you were a competitor, and I'm only talking about the very top of the game here, picking anything but the crossover was simply picking something worse. But to BMG's credit, they've gone back with sound passes to make them as fair as possible compared to the original counterparts, which I'm sure was a legal headache with all this copyright licensing nonsense, so I'm not going to hold that against them here. They heard the issue and responded productively to the community. It took a lot of outcry, but we got there. The reason why I bring this old issue up in this video here is to demonstrate how a line that used to be hard is now a little bit shakier. You don't get stats from these skins, you don't get any kind of buffs, but you do get an element of obscurity behind a paywall, as you're gonna overwhelmingly fight more people without the crossover than those with it, and therefore get less practice against its unique animations and sound cues. If the seeds for dissatisfaction and the idea that BMG is a money-hungry cabal that doesn't care about the community and every time they release something, let's get mad at them, can be traced to any single point, it's probably easiest to make the argument that it's from the crossovers. I'm not gonna say people never brought it up before, but once gameplay elements started to become affected by skins, even if it's ever so slightly, yeah, it got a little bit noisier. This is a difficult topic to broach though in terms of game design motto, because it's a tug of war between having new cool things that legitimately keep the game alive and retaining the identity of what the game has always been. Those ideas can be at odds with each other depending on how the design plays out, and for what it's worth, I do think the Brawlhalla team mostly treads the line carefully. There's some outliers and I've made videos on all of them, but generally speaking, it's okay. Which brings us to the Mandalorian, which not only has all of these swaps that I've mentioned right here, but also Grogu. He's the first ever companion, a new type of cosmetic that just launched with this skin, that follows you around the map and reacts to gameplay and celebrates and cries and looks cute, yada yada yada. Again, this is bringing new elements to the gameplay that don't directly impact your ability to play, but can indirectly impact it through distraction or chaos. Do I think companions are a big issue? No, not really. I don't think it deserves getting up in arms about, but again, it helps paint the perspective of BMG as greedy scum. And I think if you're already looking for reasons why that might be the case, this is a perfect scapegoat. If companions were in the game as a purchasable cosmetic from the game's release, I don't think anyone would have any kind of problem with it, but it's the fact that it's implemented now after this small trend of indirect gameplay elements that people are pointing to it as proof. And I should mention, most people do not care. It's just a cute little guy. And this small trend is a small trend, especially in the grand scheme of things. But given that I'm a Brawlhalla gamer in the Brawlhalla community who talks about Brawlhalla as my Brawlhalla duty, my ear is maybe a little bit too far to the ground for the Grogu hate. But you get the picture. These seeds were sown long ago, the moment things started to affect the gameplay, even if that effect on the gameplay is extremely minimal. And the reason for that is the game's original design philosophy. The other point against these crossovers in Epic Mythics is the price tag. They're a lot more expensive. It's what I mentioned at the very start of the video, which is justified by the extra work it took to put in. What's important to remember though, is that the value of this digital good is arbitrary. Not completely, of course, there's labor considerations, but there's not any real world tradable value between a Grogu and a dollar that you have in your wallet. That's more so what I'm saying. A lot of people will bring up the fact that it's only $5 more than a normal skin, so it's no big deal, but that normal skin's price is also kind of made up in the first place. So I think when you're considering buying one of these shiny new products, it should be more of a question of, do these features outweigh the cost? Will spending on this make me happy? Will it make me satisfied on it? Then is it worth it in comparison to these other skins? They've set those other skin prices for years to something that seems like it fits, and then any upscaling from that is based on those original prices. But just remember that it's your dollars going into it and your decision to say if it's fair or not. I know saying that is obvious, it might sound really dumb, but that kind of thing can get obscured when you see coin values in the shop butted up right next to each other. You might look at a 500 coin skin and a 200 coin skin and go, oh okay, well the 300 one doesn't seem so bad now. That's how grocery stores work, it's how PC parts work, it's how pretty much every tiered good and or service works. So it's something to be aware of. Anyway, you get the idea here. I've spent more time on this than I originally wanted to, but talking about it is kind of fun. Crossovers and Epic Mythics represent a slight deviation in the design philosophy that players expected and knew, and expensive additions like, let's say, a 500 coin crossover with a new type of cosmetic attached, seems to perpetuate that trend. The next way Brawlhalla makes money, although I have no idea how much they actually make off this, I don't know how successful it is the All Legends pack. This gives you every character past and future for $39.99. If you didn't know, Brawlhalla has over 60 characters, with most of them being locked upon a fresh install. $40 of characters seems like a lot for a free game, but I actually don't have a big problem with this, and I think it's probably the most fair of all of Brawlhalla's in-game income streams. I mean, it's kind of lame, but ultimately it's fine. You can get every character for free by playing and earning gold, although it will take a while, and they do have free rotations with 9 characters at the moment that have a mix of weapons and archetypes by design, and purchasing the pack for $40 is like purchasing a full game for that amount. And this deal has been around since the game was in beta, August 26, 2015. Although, if I'm not mistaken, the retail price increased from $20 to $40 in 2023. They added like 50 characters in that time, so I do understand, but that kind of news definitely increases agitation if, again, people are already looking for signs that Brawlhalla is trying to siphon more and more cash in more and more unsavory ways. I think for as consistent and long-standing that Brawlhalla has been, they've earned the goodwill. They can charge that amount for essentially their full game experience. We're talking nearly a decade now of consistent updates, new characters, new weapons, interactive feedback with the community, and some of the best esports support out there. Which, hint hint, I'm making a massive documentary on that right now. That won't be out for a while, but keep your eyes peeled. Sorry for the plug, I just said the word esports and I got activated like a sleeper cell agent. I'm just excited. So, sorry. The All Legends pack is generally okay, in my opinion. I don't think it's very fun to have characters locked, and I don't think it's great for the new player experience and keeping people around, but if the stats show it helps more than it hurts, then whatever. Battle passes are next. And look, it's something I've worked directly with BMG to advertise. I didn't get paid, I can say whatever I want though. Honestly, this is the most straightforward. I don't have much to say on this point. Battle passes are designed to just get you to keep logging in every day. And the more you log in, the higher the chance you'll spend money, or someone else will spend money. A whale will spend money. They use tactics like scarcity marketing, maybe the single most powerful social manipulation tool of all, because we're hardwired to loathe missing out. I don't know when it happened, maybe it was like 2019, 2021. It seems like everything has a limited run now. And the reason is that our lizard brains want as many resources as we can acquire now because the environment they evolved into, the environment they adapted into, was extremely uncertain. So get what you can now because you never know if you'll be able to get it again. Therefore, things that are rare seem to have more inherent value than things that aren't, even if they don't. Like, a Battle Pass Orion skin isn't any more valuable than a normal Orion skin, but you gotta get it before the time runs out. Add on to the fact that they have a free track to entice you towards the paid track, and a way to bypass the entire paid track to get everything instantly so you won't have to miss out, and it's not the most wholesome way to generate income. What are the points for the Battle Pass that keeps Brawlhalla above most of their competitors? Well, you at least earn back the value of the money you put into buying the Battle Pass in the form of mammoth coins, which is okay. I mean, it's not like that doesn't also work to justify the payment in people's minds so they're more likely to buy it, even though many won't get that full value out of it, but I'd say it's generally more positive than not having that feature. Each week's missions can also be done relatively quickly, within an hour or two, although that does depend on how much you want to purely grind it out versus playing the game normally, and your experience with the game as a whole. They also rerun the battle passes on a cycle later on, so the scarcity element is somewhat mitigated, but I don't think it's in a major way. After all, there is a massive time delay between the scarcity messaging of the battle pass's release, and when they say there's 12 weeks left, there's 6 weeks left, there's 1 week left, there's 24 hours left, and then when they actually get rerun, and we know all about how time delay works now, so. For people like me that play the game for their job, this is sick. There's 12 weeks of content, there's new things to work towards, and it makes a lot of financial sense. I don't have many complaints other than wishing it was a little bit more comprehensive, but from a price point perspective purely, $9.99 for that is something I am totally down for. The thing is, that's not most people's situations. I'd say battle passes are kind of cringe, generally speaking. If I see a game with a battle pass, I automatically think of it in a lower regard. That's just an automatic assumption. It might not be based on any evidence, the game might be totally fine, the game might be amazing, but the idea is just so sullied in my mind. Yes, Brawlhallas are pretty good in terms of value and circumventing that pure exclusivity for exclusivity's sake, but it's still a battle pass, and it's important to be aware of what they exist for, why you're buying it, and if it's something you truly want or something your lizard brain is begging you to get before it's too late. Again, I don't think it's bad. I buy it every time, and I have a great time. I love seeing mission numbers go up. It brings me joy. I'll spend some money for some joy. Just be careful. I know I'm being a little piggy boy and I think that's totally cool, but if it doesn't make sense for you to be a little piggy, don't be a little piggy. You won't be any worse off. So those are the main elements of Brawlhalla's monetization. Skins, epic mythic crossover skins, chests, buying legends, and battle passes. There's a handful more like seasonal packs with exclusive limited time weapon skins and discounted mammoth coin deals. I don't think those are too important to dive into. You can draw the same analysis on that as everything else here. I buy them if I need coins for a video basically, but I talk about all of that in this extended section here to illustrate the background context of the shop we're using here. This is one that has some pitfalls, it has some traps. It has ways to keep you spending more and more after you make that first initial purchase. So after looking through all of it, I think it's a little bit more clear why the Mandalorian has created some frustration among the community. More so than the skin itself, he exists as a symbolic representative of the woes in upscaling a microtransaction-based business model. It'll work as long as people are willing to pay, but there is a breaking point where you'll lose some goodwill. Now, some goodwill will always get lost because a lot of people, especially online, just like to hate everything. That's so epic. But what's difficult is sorting out that with the legitimate concerns on creeping shady tactics, and or, since these aren't mutually exclusive, genuinely wanting the best for the game and the dev team. Like, I want them to make money. More than that, I want them to thrive and make a lot of money. And I think a good chunk of the outcry here is outcry for outcry's sake. Not all of it. I mean, I've spent this entire video so far demonstrating why not all of it is pretty justified, but this comment actually sums up the argument pretty well. I can't believe people cry this much about the price of awesome cosmetics in a free game. Brawlhalla is extremely polished, and it's not free to make games or keep them updated. If you're that cheap, don't buy the skins. Simple. Look, it's a little brash, it's a little sharp, I don't think it's the nicest way to say it, but I can relate to the takeaway message here. Again, I know I just made this entire video, but ultimately, if you don't want something, it is your responsibility to not buy it. People are gonna try to get you to buy things you don't need for your entire life. I will do that. And you're gonna fall for it, maybe not from me. And I'm gonna fall for it, maybe from me. And we live in a world where that's super normal, even though it's super annoying. They're gonna use underhanded strategies. They're gonna use strategies that are basically underhanded but framed as being on your side. They're maybe even gonna use strategies that are carbon copies of other people's strategies, but with 2 points that are less bad, so the whole thing seems a lot better. I wouldn't say any of this is sick, but it's not really that bad unless it's pushed to the extreme. I think it's weird when all of that psychology is running like a well-oiled machine and game systems or lotto systems or whatever it is feel intricately designed to vacuum up money. Kinda weird, but I'm not hell-bent to earth and back about it. I don't think that's a saying. I just try to be aware of what's going on and I feed the beast when I want to feed the beast. Tell my Brawlhalla gamers what's going on in the Brawlhalla money world and then go on with eating my drywall. I'm down to drop $20 on the Mandalorian, even $50 on the whole Star Wars crossover, because I'll recoup that in the video making it, and I can write that off on my taxes. That doesn't mean the purchase doesn't damn hurt, and it doesn't mean they're not getting me with that big old new exclusive item tag, but it's worth it to me as someone that reports on the game. Not everyone is in that boat, so just be aware of what you're doing. That's essentially the thesis of this entire thing. Make informed choices. Depending on the supplier, they may try to restrict as much information from you as possible. That's usually a scam, but otherwise, know that essentially all marketing has some form of psychological manipulation to it, just by the nature of things. They've all got those elements. You didn't want something or didn't know you wanted something, and they're trying to convince you that you do. Whether or not you think that's chill or that's omega evil is up to you and probably more accurately up to the situation. And the phrase psychological manipulation sounds really sinister when oftentimes it's just that idea. You don't want something, they want to sell it to you. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be old grandma made cookies, buy my old grandma's cookies. Old grandma cookies, my grandma made cookies, buy them, and it's her last day to live, and the only thing she ever wanted was to sell you some cookies. If you don't buy them right now, her death is on your hands. You'll have to live with her for the rest of your days. That happened to me. True story. I just lied. What did I say that? Exclusivity, scarcity, limited runs, FOMO, these aren't red flags that something is automatically terrible, but remember that they do exist and be aware when you do or when you don't want to give into them. From my current understanding, and this is definitely subject to change as I learn more, Brawlhalla seems to be more opportunistic than directly predatory in their monetization. They probably do make a good amount of income from purchases that are maybe not the most sound decision making, and those can perhaps be traced back to these opportunistic strategies. The question of whether or not that's proper, whether or not it's something you want to support with your dollar, that's up to you. I tend to think that it's mostly okay. I mean, I obviously have some issues that I've brought up here. This is a long video, but I am evidently a capitalist oinky oinky little piggy until the day I croak. I mean, I just finished up a run with an exclusive limited time plushie that I had notifications to tell you there were 48 hours left, 24 hours left. So I'm slopping up in the mud pie slop like everyone else here. Yummy, yummy mud pie slop. I guess I'm just very impressed with a monetization model like Rivals of Aether 2, which is a platform fighter that just released, and also has an in-game currency, and also has a type of battle pass system through monthly events. But it has a direct $1 to 100 Aetherbuck ratio. It has unlockable cosmetics through playing, and it has the monthly event items available in the shop afterwards forever, somewhat circumventing that FOMO. Important to note, Rivals 2 is a $29.99 game, so a very different draw than Brawlhalla, and each install is a very different player from minute 1, but I think you can still create some points of comparison. I liked what I saw, I compared it back to my day 1, my home slice, the good old BH, and now we have this mini section right here. I do believe Brawlhalla is quite fair. Not even just relative to its competition of free-to-play games out there, but in general. The game is free, and the game is totally fine and totally enjoyable and good free. I think $40 for all past, current, and future characters is a pretty fair price given the track record of the game. I think the devs are genuinely wonderful, and it's amazing this cosmetic monetization model has allowed for the team and their game to grow and thrive. I'm thankful for the work that goes into the scene, the support for competition, and the obvious care and passion BMG has for their community. All of that is the case, and simultaneously, that doesn't mean they're perfect. It could always be better. Yes, they do pass the industry standard bar, with flying colors in some categories, but they're still using some tactics that are a little bit icky. Lights gotta stay on, people gotta be paid, the games industry is terribly, terribly hard to make it in. I get that, I'm not trying to mess with the bag or stir the pot too much here, but I do think it's at least worth chatting about, if for no other reason than nudging people 1% closer towards making more informed decisions about their purchases. If that's the case, then I'm a happy camper. Buy everything I ever make from this point onward, or I will eat the planet.